there's really no deal that the U.S. Attorney's Office can offer, and it's certainly not one that Diddy will accept. It would involve decades in federal prison. We're talking about mandatory minimum sentences of 10 years for both the drug charges and the sex trafficking. So we know that Diddy has fought charges before. There were state charges, there were gun-related, the nightclub shooting with J-Lo, but he's going to dig in his heels, and this case is going to trial. So if you're prosecutors, you really want to make sure that your evidence is bulletproof before you go down that route.
Things just took a dark turn in the Diddy case. In a shocking courtroom moment, Diddy's own lawyer made a slip-up so serious that the judge stopped everything and issued a warning about a possible life sentence. Yes, life. This wasn't just a minor mistake. This might have exposed something much bigger behind the scenes. Witnesses said the courtroom froze as the judge's tone changed completely. What exactly did the lawyer say, and why did it trigger such a severe reaction? Stay with me, because what just happened could flip this entire case upside down. And fetch.
Well, it's day 3 in the jury selection for the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. He pleaded not guilty to all charges and denied all sexual assault allegations. Now, for years, this has been a public spectacle playing out on camera and social media. Are they going to be able to find an impartial jury, especially since everything is on social media? You can't, you don't even have to be here to know what's going on. So is it possible to find impartial?
Yeah, it really is. I think people always have that question, like if it's a famous case or an infamous case, like as is the case here, can you find 12 people that will just block everything out and just listen to the facts as they come in? And I can tell you, I've done it so many times, you can. There is not going to be one person that has not heard about this case. And I wouldn't, as a prosecutor or a defense, or heard of him, as a prosecutor or a defense attorney, I don't want that person, because that person's been living under a rock. I want someone actually that has some understanding of the world, some understanding of some conviction. I also want someone that is willing to be strong in the jury room, because
what the lawyer said and why it changed everything. So let's break down what reportedly happened. According to multiple courtroom sources, Diddy's lawyer was trying to press a witness, Ard, during cross-examination. The goal was simple: create doubt, shake their credibility, maybe even trip them up. But instead, the lawyer ended up referencing a phone log, and that one move allegedly confirmed something the defense had been denying since day one. One legal analyst explained it like this: they brought up a time-stamped call to try and corner the witness, but that log matched up with the FBI's timeline exactly. That's the problem, because Diddy's team had already argued that those calls never existed or were unrelated, but now his lawyer just handed that info back to the prosecution and made it court record.
A highly anticipated trial against Sean Diddy Combs starts today. The hip-hop artist facing sex trafficking and racketeering charges that could have him spend the rest of his life in prison.
He's pled not guilty, and jury selection is expected to be complicated. Let's get right to Good Day's Briella Tomasetti. She's live outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan this morning with the very latest. Briella, good morning.
To Shani and Dania, good morning to both of you. Sean Diddy Combs was an entrepreneur and superstar for more than 2 decades. Today, though, he finds himself in the midst of a major legal battle. Jury selection set to start at around 8:30 this morning. Here's what's going to happen. Potential candidates will be called into a private room to be questioned one by defense lawyers and prosecutors. Back in September, Sean Diddy Combs was indicted on charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He was arrested at a Manhattan hotel where he had been staying in anticipation of his eventual indictment and has been held without bail since then. Prosecutors allege Combs used his business empire to conduct freak-offs, which they describe as highly orchestrated sex performances.
Another courtroom blogger posted, the defense was trying to say the witness was lying, and then they pulled out a document that proved the witness was right. That kind of slip up in a federal case, it's huge, because once something is spoken in open court, even accidentally, it becomes part of the transcript. And that transcript can be reviewed by jurors, by judges, and even by federal investigators. And the worst part? No one interrupted. The judge let it happen. It wasn't until after the moment passed that the courtroom suddenly went still. One person said, it was like everyone in the room realized at the same time, oh no, he just gave the government a win. If that document ties Diddy directly to one of the allegations, this could be the moment that changes everything.
Avery, in some folks' eyes, they were not non-consensual, and because of that, they were not criminal acts.
You know, there's been also a lot of discussion about whether Sean Diddy Combs himself will take the stand. You know, defense teams often shy away from that, even if, you know, someone is very keen on, you know, sharing their perspective, their truth. Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think that he is not going to take the stand?
Yikes, you know, I would absolutely advise him not to take the stand, in part because there's so much impeachment material that he would be confronted with while on the stand. Look at the Cassie video in and of itself. You know, the prosecutor would walk through that in painstaking detail and say, hey, is this you, you know, kicking your girlfriend in the stomach while she's on the ground? Is this you dragging her by her hair? Don't you understand that that could cause pain to somebody or cause them to be intimidated? Was that part of your design all along? All of these questions could be damning for Diddy, and I doubt that he would take the stand.
So now the court has something new, something the defense basically confirmed for them, and that's when the judge stepped in and dropped the warning. Not a suggestion, not a casual comment, a full-on, in-your-face statement about the possibility of a life sentence. Let's break down exactly what was said and why people are calling it a legal red flag. The judge's warning: this could mean life. After the slip-up, everyone thought the court might just move on, but the judge wasn't letting this moment pass unnoticed. According to insiders sitting in the room, the judge paused, leaned forward slightly, looked straight at Diddy, and said something like, "This kind of evidence, if substantiated, can carry a life sentence under federal law." And from there, the room froze.
Sean Combs just breathed his last breath of free air. I don't think that man is ever going to see the outside of a prison ever again. He was denied bail, meaning he will remain inside until his trial. His defense team offered $50 million and some other perks to throw in. But $50 million in bail to say, let this man out so that he can fight his own case. And the judge says, not going to do it. You know how much bail is usually applied in a murder case? $1 million. He was willing to put up $50 million, and the judge said no dice, because the judge happened to see and hear some of the evidence, which included that video from Cassie Ventura. And he said, I'm looking at a man actually commit the crimes that are being alleged here.
Let's be clear. This wasn't a sentencing, no formal ruling, but it was absolutely a warning. One legal commentator said, when a judge drops a line like that in front of the entire courtroom, they're doing two things: putting pressure on the defense and sending a signal to the prosecution. The message? Keep digging. You might have more than you think. People in the courtroom said the judge's tone was serious, like no performance, no games energy. One journalist posted, that wasn't for drama, it was deliberate. Diddy's lawyer reportedly stayed quiet after that. No objections, no responses, just silence. It was like the defense knew they stepped on a legal landmine and couldn't back out. And here's the real kicker. Once the judge said those words, it gave the prosecution permission to treat the situation more aggressively. Legal analysts are now saying this warning could be the pivot point, the moment the case stops being about what happened and starts being about how long Diddy could serve. This told everyone in that room, the gloves are off now, one courtroom analyst said.
The sex trafficking trial of rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs is set to begin tomorrow. Nearly 8 months after his arrest, jury selection will begin here in Manhattan. It is happening the same day as the Met Gala, where Diddy was once a fixture among A-list celebrities. And Diddy has pleaded not guilty in the case, but if convicted, he faces what could amount to a life sentence. Joining me now to break it all down is former Florida State Attorney Dave Arenberg. Dave, always good to see you. I'm curious how challenging you think it is going to be for the defense and the prosecution to pick the right jurors in this high-profile case. What are they looking for, and is it possible to find someone who doesn't know this man?
Phil, good to be with you. You know, you don't need an empty vessel. You don't need a blank slate. You just need to have jurors who are willing to set aside what they know, what they've heard, and just follow the evidence and the law. It happens all the time. We've seen higher profile people than Diddy go to trial, like Donald Trump, and we're able to find an impartial jury of their peers. So it doesn't need to be someone who is just living in a cave, who's never heard of this. They can hear things and know things, but they just have to commit under oath to follow the evidence and the law, and both sides get to try to vet and weed out those people who can't do that.
So now the warning's been issued, but what was the actual evidence that sparked it? That's what we're going to dig into next, because if that phone log or document really ties Diddy to the timeline of alleged abuse or trafficking, then this isn't just a courtroom slip-up. This could be the key that cracks the case wide open to what the evidence could be. So what kind of document or detail could cause this kind of courtroom panic? From what insiders are saying, it appears to be some kind of communication record, likely a call log, text message summary, or encrypted chat that connects Diddy to either a key witness or an alleged victim during a specific time frame the FBI has already flagged.
American rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs has been denied bail as he awaits trial on federal charges. Combs pleaded not guilty to racketeering, sex trafficking and transporting for prostitution in a New York court. Prosecutors allege the 54-year-old created a criminal enterprise through his business empire, which he has allegedly run since about 2008. They claim Combs gave victims a variety of party drugs during extended sexual performances and that he used his business associates, staff and other personnel to help conceal his abuse. His lawyer says he'll appeal the decision to hold the rapper without bail. If convicted, Combs faces a minimum of 15 years in prison.
Here's where it gets wild. That date allegedly lines up with travel records and NDA filings submitted earlier in the investigation. One legal insider said it's the kind of overlap that makes prosecutors very confident because it's multiple data points confirming the same story. And now that Diddy's lawyer mentioned it in open court, that data is officially part of the record. According to a blog post by an entertainment journalist who's been attending the hearings, this evidence may link Diddy to coordination of a private event where multiple accusations have been centered. In simpler terms, the same event that's come up in lawsuits and federal investigations might now have a direct documented connection to Diddy, and it was his lawyer who brought it in.
ABC News has learned that a jury is expected to be seated tomorrow in the racketeering and sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. More prospective jurors questioned today to make up the group of 18 people needed to officially begin the trial on schedule on May 12th. And Combs has pleaded not guilty to racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution charges, 5 counts and all. Let's go ahead and bring in our Rena Roy for the latest on this story. And Rena, good to see you again. In this story here, the judge criticized lawyers on both sides for failing to find qualified jurors and said, quote, "We are running out of time." What more do we know?
Yeah, well, you and I were just sitting here just a short time ago, right, questioning if things could get delayed, talking about how it seemed like a slow day. Well, it turns out the judge thought so too. A lot of people were dismissed today, whether it was because of potential bias or conflicts, but he basically told both sides they have to get this done so that opening statements can begin as scheduled on Monday. As he said, they're running out of time. Now, as it stands, there are 35 prospective jurors in the pool, and they need to reach a pool of 45 before narrowing that down and seating 12 jurors plus alternates. And both sides agreed it is likely they could get this done tomorrow, so we will be keeping a close eye on that.
Even worse, the timeline supposedly includes messages that were previously disputed by the defense. If that's true, and those messages show coordination or involvement, Diddy could face conspiracy charges, or worse. One federal prosecutor, not involved in the case, explained it like this: if you're tied to planning, even if you weren't physically there, that's enough to trigger a federal sentence. And in trafficking cases, that can go all the way to life.
Today, in a New York federal courtroom, Sean Diddy Combs told the judge he was, quote, a little nervous. The rap mogul's criminal trial began this morning. He is sex trafficking, racketeering, and more. The two sides are now in the process of selecting a jury of 12 plus alternates. Most of the prospective jurors acknowledge they're aware of Combs' case and also the allegations that span some 20 years. Among those allegations, he's accused of forcing at least 3 women to engage in sex acts with him and at times with male prostitutes during parties known as freak-offs, which last for days. Combs faces spending the rest of his life in prison. CNN's Kara Scannell has been covering all of these developments for us. She's outside New York's federal court right now. So some of these prospective jurors already turned away. Kara, why?
Yeah, a number of jurors have been turned away. One woman, because she had seen that hotel surveillance video, she saw a still image of it where Combs is on camera kicking and dragging his then girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. Now, the jurors said that she referred to it as damning evidence, and after a back and forth with the judge, he decided to excuse her for cause because she had formed an opinion on it. I mean, other jurors had been excused, one because the man had just started a new job and couldn't take off 8 weeks.
Now that we've looked at what the actual evidence might be and how it connects Diddy to the timeline, we need to talk about how bad this could get. Because in federal court, once you open that door, you can't close it again. Let's break down how this mistake might backfire legally, big time, in the next phase. How this could backfire legally for Diddy. Now that the mistake is officially on record, let's talk about how this could seriously backfire for Diddy in the courtroom. Once something is brought up during trial, even if it wasn't meant to be, it can't be undone. If the judge rules that it's now admissible, which insiders say is likely, the prosecution can use it against him moving forward. And it all came from his own side.
His attorney, Mark Agnifilo, had raised a concern about what happens if jurors saw something, did something, said something between when they filled out the questionnaire and when they're being questioned, right? I mean, I guess talk to me what we learned about that, but also, do we have any idea what the final questions were in this questionnaire?
So to answer that last question, no, unfortunately, I don't know what's in that final version of the questionnaire, but I do have some of the proposed questions that the defense team kind of proposed to. It was interesting questions. What's your age? What's your sex, your gender identity? Do you have children? Are you currently working? What's the highest level of education that you have had? One thing I thought was interesting is, do you use any social media platforms? If so, which ones? How do you get your news? What, if any, newspapers, magazines, websites, online news services or publications do you read? Do you listen to any podcasts? So possibly if you're listening to Sidebar, you might not be able to be on this jury or anything like that. As far as, you know, they asked what type of music do you like? How often do you listen to music? Which I'm just like, what is that necessarily relevant? And then even on the government side, they had questions such as, you know, you may hear evidence in this case related to sexual assault, including rape. Do you have any feelings, beliefs, or experiences?
One courtroom analyst said it plainly. This is what you call a self-inflicted wound. They gave the prosecution the very thing they were trying to suppress. In legal terms, this is known as opening the door. And once the door is open, the other side is legally allowed to walk through it, examine the material, and even dig deeper into surrounding evidence. That's how small mistakes spiral into major disasters. Another issue, it makes Diddy's whole defense team look less credible. If you've been denying something for weeks, then your lawyer turns around and proves the opposite in court, the jury notices. The judge definitely notices, and that lack of consistency could destroy any sense of reasonable doubt. One trial expert tweeted, "It doesn't matter what they say tomorrow, the jury already saw them stumble today."
So now that the Diddy trial has started and we'll learn whether he did, one of the things that we know is that he actually rejected a plea deal recently, which would have involved him avoiding a life prison sentence, which is what he faces with the charges that are against him. It's interesting that he did reject that deal, because certainly in the court of public opinion he seems guilty beyond all reason, but perhaps the evidence in the actual case itself isn't that strong, and that's why we are seeing him reject a plea deal like that. We've seen that before, and so we will see what happens.
And here's the real kicker. The judge now has the right to reconsider earlier objections based on this moment. That means the prosecution might be able to reintroduce things they were previously blocked from using, like sealed exhibits or restricted witness testimony. It's a chain reaction, said one federal defense attorney. When you lose control of the narrative in court, you don't just lose the argument, you lose the strategy.
The trial hearing will start in a matter of hours in the federal sex crimes case against rapper and hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Combs is facing at least 3 federal charges, including sex trafficking, and faces up to life in prison. I want to bring in CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman to talk about this. So what can we expect in this pretrial hearing today, Katrina?
Hi, Vlad. The judge set today's hearing to resolve any disputes over questionnaires that jurors have been filling out. Basically, what they decided to do in this case is that because Sean Combs is such a high-profile defendant, and it's always difficult or more difficult to find a jury in those cases, they're bringing in hundreds of jurors this week to fill out these written questionnaires. Then both parties are going to go through those and also discuss with the judge any biases, any issues that they see, and whittle down the list of jurors that they want to bring in for in-person questioning. So I expect that at today's hearing, we're going to be hearing about any issues related to those questionnaires, Vlad, and potentially any other pretrial issues they want to bring up, because jury selection is set to start next week.
So not only did the defense hand over damaging info, they may have opened the door for even more to come in. But how did the courtroom react? What was Diddy's vibe? And what did his team do right after the warning hit? Let's talk about the atmosphere inside the court and how the pressure is now showing on everyone's faces. The courtroom reactions. If you've ever been in a courtroom during a tense moment, you know it's not always loud. Sometimes it's the silence that says everything, and that's exactly what witnesses described the moment the judge said the words life sentence. Diddy's lawyer froze. Diddy leaned forward in his seat. The gallery, filled with media, legal aides, and even a few industry insiders, went completely still.
Major developments tonight involving the case against Sean Diddy Combs, what he decided in court today, and what this now means, the move coming just 4 days before his trial is set to begin. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, Sean Combs makes it official. He's rejecting the government's offer to plead guilty and spare himself the possibility of a prolonged term in prison. When asked if he turned down the offer, Combs answered, "Yes, I do, Your Honor," as he stood in a baggy beige jail uniform. Terms were not disclosed, but prosecutors did say a plea could result in a shorter sentence for Combs than if he's convicted. The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now that will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame to sexually exploit both women and men for decades. Combs has pleaded not guilty to racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution charges that accused him of coercing alleged victims into prolonged, drug-fueled sexual activity that he called freak-offs and threatening them into silence. At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes, as his lawyers argue the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way. Jury selection begins Monday. David, prospective jurors have already started answering written questions. If Combs is convicted, he faces what could amount to a life sentence. David?
Aaron Katursky was following this case for us. Aaron, thank you.
One journalist inside the courtroom wrote, "You could see it in Diddy's posture. He went from confident to cornered. Just like that." According to others in the room, his lawyers huddled immediately after the session, whispering and flipping through notes like they were trying to figure out how to fix what had just happened. But by then, the damage was done. It was already in the transcripts. The jury already heard it. Even courtroom staff were reportedly shaken. One assistant, speaking anonymously, said, "I've seen intense cases before, but the tension today, it was different. You could feel the shift. This wasn't just a routine error. This was the kind of mistake that triggers a new strategy, a new tone, and potentially new charges." Everyone in the room understood what the judge's warning really meant. Meanwhile, the prosecution team reportedly stayed calm. No big reactions, no dramatics. Some believe they already knew the defense might walk into this trap. "They were waiting for a mistake," said one legal commentator. "They didn't even react. That's when I knew it was serious." Now the jury has seen Diddy's team trip up, and they've heard the judge mention life as a possibility. That's not a moment people forget.
Lawyers can't just quit a case when it's on the trial calendar. A judge has to approve it, and they almost never do. So why did a federal judge let Diddy's lawyer walk away? When a case is this far along, there's basically only 3 ways out. 1, the client is forcing the lawyer to do something fraudulent and criminal. 2, there's a total collapse of communication. And 3, a serious ethical violation has arisen, or there's some fundamental disagreement between the two. The lawyer must certify to the facts that constitute good cause to withdraw and that it would not adversely affect his client. And I don't see that here. So why is this judge not following the law? They must have seen something so egregious that they're just letting this lawyer out of the case without him explaining why. And I've never seen that in 20 years of practice in law. So what's really going on here? What's the legal defense that makes this lawyer, who's defended terrorists, so offended?
Now that the courtroom's rattled and the jury has heard the word life, the focus shifts to what happens next. The pressure's not just on Diddy, it's now on his legal team to either clean this up or fall apart completely. So let's break down how this impacts the next phase of the trial and where things are headed from here. What this means for the case going forward. Let's get into the part Diddy's lawyers are probably stressing about the most. What happens now? Because that slip-up didn't just make things awkward, it potentially reshaped the whole direction of the case. According to multiple legal sources, the judge may now allow previously blocked evidence to be reintroduced since the defense opened the door with their own words. That's a huge shift. One federal attorney explained it like this: "You try so hard to keep certain things out, then your side accidentally brings it in, and now it's all fair game." Reports say the prosecution is already preparing to use this moment as a legal gateway. That could mean revisiting earlier claims, pulling up additional witness statements, and strengthening charges that up until now were still seen as up for debate.
I don't know if he's part of the case. What's wrong with calling him a six-track white one?
Because he's inferring that because these are all white women on the jury, that based on race, white women are going to convict a black man because of the race component. That's what he's implying by white women who are going to prosecute Puff.
Yeah, but if he doesn't have a retainer and he's not on quote unquote Diddy's official team, he should be able to say what he wants to say.
Why can't he just say that? Like, why do people got to be cute? Why can't he just say because of this?
I mean, even if he does get to it, and I'm sure that he's probably gotten to it on the podcast, I haven't listened to the podcast, that's an issue, according to the prosecutors, because he's a very prominent attorney. Your daughter is the lead attorney for Puff. In my opinion, even if you're not consulting, it's an issue because...
But facts are still facts. Observations are still observations.
But you can't, I can't, if I'm doing that on their team, I can't sway a jury's opinion. And obviously the jury are seeing things because they keep getting on the stand admitting that they're seeing it. But
I get you, but the jury got eyes. The jury can look and see, God dang, that's a sick pack of white women over there.
And rapping.
See, that's not right, because the prosecutor could release all the things that they release, but he's not on the team and he's doing a podcast talking about it, and now it's a problem?
Because there's a gag order in place. But, well, now I just want out of here. The judge disagreed with Geragos, who said that the Supreme Court has said that defendants and their lawyers have a constitutional right to publicly defend themselves, so the attorney shouldn't be gag ordered in anything connected to this Diddy case. The judge said, nope, I don't agree with that, and he also threatened to hold Geragos in contempt of court if this happens.
The jury, meanwhile, has now seen the defense contradict itself. That matters. Even if they don't fully understand the legal weight of the moment, they absolutely feel the emotional shift. They saw a team that looked confused, said one courtroom sketch artist, and when a defense looks nervous, jurors don't feel confident. That's just human nature. Image matters, and the defense just lost some ground.
I'm outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan, where a lengthy pre-trial hearing, just about 2 hours, was held in the case of Sean Diddy Combs. Combs was in the courtroom wearing tan prison clothing. He hugged his attorneys when he entered. His mother and one son were in attendance, and another man was wearing a free Puff shirt. The judge denied the defense's motion to delay the trial by 2 months. He also ruled that drafts of one alleged victim's memoir must be turned over, but that person does not have to turn over financial documents the defense was also requesting. 3 alleged victims can testify using pseudonyms. And the judge ruled outtakes from 2 specific interviews by witnesses in the Fall of Diddy documentary who are likely to testify at trial are admissible. The next court date in the case is next Friday.
Moving forward, Diddy's team has limited options. They could try to file a motion to strike the slip-up from the record, but multiple attorneys say that's unlikely to succeed. Why? Because it was said during cross-examination, under oath, with no objection at the time. It's on the record, it's real, and it's part of the trial now, said one analyst. In other words, a no rewind button.
Yeah, Rob, that's right. Dozens of potential jurors are being questioned at this hour inside the courthouse here behind us. And because of just how famous Sean Diddy Combs is, a lot of the questioning is surrounding what they already know about the case and if they think they can be fair.
Hundreds of potential jurors are being questioned in the high-stakes criminal trial of hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Combs listening in at the Manhattan courthouse as the judge asked jurors what they know about this case, what evidence they've already seen, and if they've watched this 2016 video obtained by CNN that shows Combs kicking and dragging singer and ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura at a Los Angeles hotel.
The judge has drilled down on some of those questions that they answered in the questionnaire to see whether or not they had any issues to serving in this trial.
One juror saying she'd seen a still image of it, describing it as a potentially damning piece of evidence. The judge asking, did you form any opinions of the guilt or innocence of Mr. Combs? She responded, I learned not to. Everything is alleged and there needs to be evidence presented.
Of course, they're all going to know who Sean Combs is, but they're going to need to find jurors who, despite the fact that they are familiar with Diddy.
So now Diddy's legal defense is spinning. The prosecution's case just got stronger, and the court is preparing for more fireworks. But what about the public? Let's look at how social media, fans, and legal commentators are reacting to this courtroom meltdown, and why the internet is already calling this a potential downfall in the making. How social media and legal experts are reacting. The courtroom might have gone quiet, but outside, the internet blew up. Within minutes of the reported courtroom slip-up, hashtag Diddy trial, hashtag life sentence warning, and hashtag defense meltdown were trending across Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit. People weren't just shocked, they were dissecting every word. One viral tweet said, his own lawyer gave the judge a reason to bring up life? Oh, this trial's cooked. And honestly, that's the vibe everywhere. TikTok creators immediately jumped on the clip. Some are doing side-by-side comparisons with past testimony, court documents, and timeline breakdowns from earlier allegations. This proves the timeline's real, one creator claimed. And if Diddy's lawyer just confirmed that, he might have sealed the deal for the prosecution. Videos speculating on secret messages, insider leaks, and even potential plea deals have now flooded For You pages. Everyone's watching this unfold in real time.
I think I know why Agnifilo walked out of the courtroom. He has not withdrawn. His stationery's on. The letter to the judge.
Meanwhile, legal TikTok and YouTube lawyers are doing detailed breakdowns of what the courtroom moment really means. One attorney posted, "When a judge warns a life sentence, even unofficially, it means they're already seeing the path to that verdict. That's not random." Other experts agree, saying this might push the prosecution to go harder. This could be a psychological shift, another lawyer said. Now jurors are thinking in extremes, not doubt. And over on Reddit, it's chaos. Entire threads are dedicated to breaking down the moment frame by frame. Some users believe the defense team may have had internal conflict over strategy. One comment read, "That slip-up wasn't just an accident. That looked like confusion, like not everyone's on the same page behind the scenes." Whether that's true or not, the public's trust in Diddy's team just took a major hit. And in a high-profile case like this, public perception moves fast and hard. So the court's shaken, the jury's watching, and the public is already dragging Diddy's defense online. But what happens next? With new pressure mounting, more witnesses coming, and the judge clearly not playing, let's close this out by looking at the bigger picture. Is this trial heading for a final blow, or just starting to spiral into something even darker?